Welcome into the 2011 Bowl Championship Series Playoff Selection Show. We're going to run you down all of the teams, where everybody is going, what bowls they're going to be heading to, give you the brackets, and get you all set for the Bowl Championship Series in just 2 weeks. What better way than to get things started? We'll go ahead. You know what the top 25 is, but let's go ahead and show it to you again. You saw it on ESPN just a few moments ago. I'm sure everyone knows the top 25: LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma State, Stanford, Oregon, Arkansas, Boise State, Kansas State, South Carolina, Wisconsin, Virginia Tech, Baylor, Michigan, Oklahoma, Clemson, Georgia, Michigan State, TCU, Houston, Nebraska, and then, of course, rounding out that top 25 field is Southern Miss, Penn State, West Virginia, and Texas. How does the BCS playoffs work? Well, it's very simple, and unlike the real BCS, we don't keep our formula a secret. Here it is on the screen. 40 teams make it in. 32 of them get to play for the national championship. 8 of them get to play in the newly created NIT tournament. The top 25 teams in the BCS playoffs are the top 25 teams as voted on and are exact in the BCS playoffs. This way, in this system, you can still have all the voters, you can still have all the bowls, the great bowl committees, the student athletes can still get that week's vacation at those bowl games. And if they win, they get rewarded with another week's vacation at another bowl game. So instead of just killing off bowls, getting rid of the voters and everything, the BCS formula and everything, it still takes into account here in the playoffs. Top 25, as you just saw, they are in the BCS playoffs. Teams 26 through 32 are chosen by adding the total number of votes that a team received in both the USA Today and the AP polls. The team with the highest number of votes would get spot 26, 27, all the way on downward to 32. But here's where it gets interesting. If you win your conference, if you are a conference champion, you get an automatic bid to the BCS playoffs regardless of your ranking. So if you are unranked, if you don't have any vote, or if you're not ranked in the top 32, regardless of that, if you're a conference champion, you are in the BCS playoffs, and this is how it gets determined on this tiebreaker here. All the unranked conference champions, you get in. Whoever has the best overall record, first and foremost, above any other tiebreaker, overall record should hold the #1 value, and it does here in the BCS playoffs. The team with the highest record of the non-ranked conference champions will get the highest spot. If that's tied, if the two teams played each other, then the head-to-head in that would get the higher spot. After that, it goes by conference record, non-conference record, and then the points difference, points allowed versus points against. This same system, or the same tiebreaker method, would happen if, say, we had two teams that were tied for the conference championship in a division. Then we'd use these tiebreakers to figure out who would be the champion. This year, we don't have that problem. The 3 unranked conference champions, which we'll get to in just a moment, they clearly won their conference. There are no tiebreakers to look to. Here's where it gets interesting. If you're in the top 32 and you get knocked out by one of those unranked conference champions, in the past you were kicked out, you were eliminated, you went back home. However, this year we have the first ever 8-team NIT tournament, a little bit of a mini tournament to give the teams that really did deserve to get to a bowl game something else to play for, and then the reward, the 2 teams that make it to the NIT championship, they get to play in the Sheraton Hawaii Bowl, so that is a great reward for them. Without further ado, let's fill out, you've seen 1 through 25, let's fill out 26 through 40 and figure out where everybody is going. But first, we're going to take a look at that AP USA Today added votes. Here it is. Penn State with 318 votes. We can go ahead and ignore them because they were already in the top 25. Here are the teams, though. Florida State with 117 votes. They're going to get spot number 26. Cincinnati, BYU, and you look at BYU above Notre Dame, even though they both have 32 votes. You look at overall record, BYU has a better overall record than Notre Dame. That's why they get 1 spot higher than the Fighting Irish. So BYU and Notre Dame. And there we are. We're going to go ahead and fill them in. 26, 27, 28, 29. Florida State, Cincinnati, BYU, and Notre Dame. And as you just saw, that was voted on by the AP voters and USA Today. Here's where things get interesting. You got to add in your non-ranked conference champions. Well, it just so happens those teams are right next in a row. That would be Arkansas State and Northern Illinois, champions of the Sun Belt and of the MAC, with 27 and 21 votes respectively. They get spots number 30 and 31. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is why it's important to be as high ranked as you can. This is why more games count in the BCS playoffs. Georgia Tech at 17 votes, they should be team number 32. They're going to get kicked out because Louisiana Tech, with 2 lonesome votes, they are the WAC champions. And by being the conference champions, they automatically qualify for the BCS playoffs. We would normally look at the tiebreakers to see where Louisiana Tech, Arkansas State, Northern Illinois would go. It doesn't matter because there's only one spot left, and that's number 32. Louisiana Tech gets to jump over Virginia, Missouri, and Georgia Tech for that final spot. So Georgia Tech getting kicked out of the BCS playoffs, the number 32 seed. However, as we said, different than this year, instead of being kicked out and having to sit at home, they're going to get to move on to the first ever NIT, so they still get to play for something. And we're going to go ahead and give you the NIT right now. You see Georgia Tech, they're going to be the 1 seed. Missouri at number 16, they're your 2 seed. Virginia, Tulsa, Rutgers, Louisville, and Texas, they're not going to be in the NIT. Texas, although only receiving 1 vote between the AP and USA Today, they are ranked in the BCS playoffs top 25. So Texas is in the BCS playoffs. Still got the controversy here with the voters and all that, but that's just how college football works. So taking a look at the NIT, there's your top 6 as we showed you. Georgia Tech, Missouri, Virginia, Tulsa, Rutgers, Louisville. How do we get the other 2 teams? Well, we use the tiebreaker. Bringing this screen back up, the tiebreaker system. Overall record, first and foremost. If you take a look at every team in college football, there's only one other team with 9 wins and 4 losses of anybody. You take a look at all the teams. All the 9-win teams are already in the BCS playoffs. There's one that isn't, and that is the Ohio Bobcats. They're going to be number 7. After that, you go to the 8-4 teams. We had about 17, 18, 8-4 teams. So what is the second tiebreaker? It's head-to-head. Well, none of those teams really play each other. That one, you can kind of throw that one out. That's hearsay because it's such a mix of 18. You know, some teams play each other, some teams didn't. You go to the third tiebreaker, conference record. Of all the 8-4 teams, only one team finished 7-1 in their conference, and we're about to show you right here. It was the Toledo Rockets. They were the only 8-4 team that finished with just 7 wins, with 7 wins and just 1 loss in their conference. So the schools from the MAC filling out the final spots in the NIT. Ohio scoring 21 points in that MAC title game, 20 points, in the first half of that MAC title game. They were so close to getting their first BCS Playoffs bowl bid. It won't happen here instead, but they do get to go to the NIT based on the best overall record, 9 wins and 4 losses. So now that you know who is in 1 through 40, let's take a look at who is playing who. We'll start off with number 1 versus number 32. There it is. It's a Louisiana showdown. LSU taking on Louisiana Tech and the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl in a first-round game. We remember what happened last season. Auburn, number 1, undefeated. They played a team from the same state, the Troy Trojans, number 32 in the GoDaddy.com Bowl. Lots of fans from both sides. Auburn did have the advantage because they get more ticket sales. They get about 68% of the tickets for being the higher seed, but there's still a lot of Troy fans, and Troy was able to pull the upset over Auburn. Now you have 2 Louisiana schools going at it in the New Orleans Bowl. LSU, they will get more ticket sales to that game. They'll get the 68%, but there's sure to be a lot of Louisiana Tech fans as the WAC champions who jumped into the BCS playoffs by winning the conference. They are in their first ever BCS playoffs ever. They get to play the number 1 seed in the New Orleans Bowl. That one will be Friday, December 16th at 1 p.m. on ESPN. Moving along to number 2, it is Alabama versus NIU for the second year in a row. The Huskies have made the BCS playoffs. They were eliminated last year by Wisconsin, and they're going to have a tall task ahead of them this year as the Crimson Tide at the number 2 seed. They get their second pick from the bowl games. The highest ranked teams in the BCS playoffs get their first pick of the 16 first-round bowl games. Alabama gets pick number 2. They pick the bowl in Mobile. They should definitely have a lot of fans traveling to that game to support the Crimson Tide in this state. It's NIU and Alabama. That game will be at 4:30 on ESPN on Saturday. We all know number 3, Oklahoma State University. No controversy here. They're right in the thick of the BCS playoffs. They get the Arkansas State Red Wolves, the Sun Belt champions. First time for Arkansas State heading to the BCS playoffs. The Sun Belt, though, you got to look out for the Sun Belt Conference. They are 3-2 all time in the first round in the BCS playoffs. They've had it was 2007 when FAU knocked off number 1 Ohio State. We've seen Troy at number 5 take down USC, and then last year Troy at 32 take down the number 1 ranked Auburn Tigers. A Sun Belt team has never won in the second round. They're 0-3. But in the first round, fear the Sun Belt Conference because they are 3-1, but they're 3-2 in first round games. But also Oklahoma State, their team, they've been to the Elite 8 twice. They've been to the Final Four once. Last year, they were in the Elite 8. Last year, they took care of undefeated TCU in the BCS playoffs. And I'm sure Mike Gundy's going to have his team ready to go. That game will be Friday at 8 o'clock, prime time on ESPN. That is the Bell Helicopter Armed Forces Bowl. Up next, number 4, Stanford. There's been a lot of talk about rematches. I can't quite understand why, but maybe this is what they're talking about. A rematch from a game just a couple of weeks ago. Number 4 versus number 29, and the Stanford Cardinal getting pick number 4 of the 16 first-round bowl games. They want the game in San Francisco, just a few hours away from campus. It's the Kraft Fight Hunger Bowl between the Stanford Cardinal and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Last year, the Cardinal were eliminated in the first round by number 29 Miami, Ohio, who went all the way to the Sugar Bowl. They're number 4 again this year, and they're trying to avoid going down again. That game will be Saturday in prime time at 8 o'clock on ESPN. Number 5 versus number 28, Oregon versus BYU. The Cougars and the Ducks, and Oregon at pick number 5. They choose the Las Vegas Bowl, Mako Bowl, Las Vegas, and BYU Cougars, they're looking to make a big run, and the Oregon Ducks, they went into the BCS playoffs last year undefeated. They struggled against Navy in the first round. They were eliminated in the second round by Nebraska. They are hoping to have a really big run this year, and maybe some of the national attention is off of them with those 2 losses they've had. This could be their chance to make a big run. That game will be Friday, December 16th at 9 p.m. on ESPN2. Number 6, Arkansas. They will be taking on a team from the Big East co-champions, the Cincinnati Bearcats, and Arkansas Razorbacks. They choose the Music City Bowl, Franklin American Mortgage Company Music City Bowl right there in Nashville, Tennessee, in a game that they won last season against UCF, the Music City Bowl, and that helped propel the Razorbacks all the way to the Final Four before being eliminated. Can Arkansas go on another major run? The Bearcats in Cincinnati, they haven't been back to the BCS playoffs since they were eliminated. They were the number 3 seed, undefeated a couple of years ago. They gave up 70 points to Navy's triple option, the biggest lopsided blowout in BCS playoff history. What's going to happen when the Razorbacks and the Bearcats go at it? That game is Saturday morning at 1 p.m. on ESPN. Another rematch. We're talking about rematches. This is a rematch from last year. These two duked it out in a game that came down to one final play. You can see the highlights over on the YouTube page. This will be at the same field, but it'll be the first ever famous Idaho Potato Bowl, a rematch from last year. Boise State versus Florida State on the blue one more time and that game will be Friday, December 16th at 4:30 p.m. Boise State, they've been to the national championship twice. They've won it all once. Kellen Moore's senior year, what kind of impact will the Broncos make? Or can the Florida State Seminoles convert this time on that last-second touchdown and send the Broncos home with a round one loss, something that hasn't happened to them since 2007, the Taylor Thart days. We move along, and here's kind of where the controversy starts. You got a 7-5 Auburn team who was absolutely demolished on their own home field on the final game of the regular season, but the voters, they like the Tigers, and they're pushing them in at number 25. They're going to get to play Kansas State, number 8. Kansas State gets the 8th pick of the remaining 16 bowl games, and they want to go to Shreveport, Louisiana. That's the closest destination for all their fans. Kansas State into the BCS playoffs for the first time ever, and Auburn trying to avenge last season's loss to the Trojans. They're going to have a tough task ahead of them against the Kansas Wildcats. It's the Advocare V100 Independence Bowl, and that one is Saturday, December 17th at 4:30 on ESPN2. Number 9 versus number 24, the South Carolina Gamecocks versus the Texas Longhorns. Another controversial pick, as the Texas Longhorns were another team that were demolished on their final regular season game of the year by Robert Griffin III and Baylor. They somehow get the push. They're in the BCS playoffs. They got the votes. And South Carolina at pick number 9, they're taking the Belk Bowl. They're stealing that one away from Clemson, who was eyeing that one all year long in our original bowl projection. So they're going to get to go from South Carolina to Charlotte, North Carolina to play in the first ever Belk Bowl, and that'll be Thursday at 4:30 here on ESPN2. Wisconsin making their second appearance in the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl. They were there last year against NIU, and that win propelled them all the way to the national championship game, where they eventually lost to Ohio State. They will be going up against the West Virginia Mountaineers, a team that was eliminated by LSU in the first round last year. The Little Caesars Pizza Bowl, Wisconsin and West Virginia. That one is on Friday, December 16th at 4:30 on ESPN2. Virginia Tech, the team that was hoping to make a big run in the BCS playoffs. They had a great regular season, but they stumbled twice to Clemson. Is this team for real, or are they not? Well, we're going to get to find out, because at pick number 11, they get to go to the Military Bowl, a relatively close jump for the Virginia Tech Hokies to go from Virginia up to Washington, D.C., but it's also a pretty minimal jump for the Penn State Nittany Lions going from Pennsylvania to Washington, D.C., so that should be a jam-packed house as number 11 takes on number 22 in a game Thursday, December 15th at 4:30 on ESPN. Southern Miss, they pulled the upset against the undefeated Houston Cougars. How big of a run can this team make? Well, we're going to get to see if they are national championship worthy when they go up against another high-powered offense. That Southern Miss defense absolutely destroyed Case Keenum. They got to go up against another high-powered offense and another high-powered quarterback in Robert Griffin III. The Baylor Bears making one of their first BCS playoff appearances. They get pick number 12. The closest thing to them to Texas is the Insight Bowl in Tempe, Arizona. This should be a fun one. Southern Miss and Baylor, and that one is Saturday in prime time at 8 o'clock on ESPN2. The second ever New Era Pinstripe Bowl, and it's a Big Ten showdown. Michigan Wolverines at number 13. They will be playing the Nebraska Cornhuskers at number 20, and at choice number 13. They're taking the closest thing to them, and that is Yankee Stadium in the Pinstripe Bowl. You can tune into that game on Friday morning, and that one is going to be at 1 p.m. on ESPN. Oklahoma Sooners, a team that has been to the BCS playoffs 3 out of 4 years. They've made it to the Elite 8 every year they've been in the playoffs. They're going to be going up against a team from just a state below them. The Houston Cougars upset last week, or this weekend, against the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Two teams that were both eyeing some better bowl games. For Oklahoma, they're hoping to get into the Independence Bowl. That would have been a really short jump for them. for the Houston Cougars, they were hoping to get into that Insight Bowl, which would have been a pretty short jump for them. Instead, both Oklahoma and the Houston Cougars get hammered this Saturday, so instead of them getting to play in a close bowl game, they have to travel all the way to Florida. Their fans are going to have to make that travel, but if they want to make a run, they got to deal with these long bowl trips, because that's what happens. More games count in the BCS playoffs, and you got to win these games if you want to get these close bowl matchups. But it should be a fun one with a couple of high-powered offenses. Landry Jones going up against Case Keenum, number 14, against number 19, and that one is Saturday at noon on ESPN. Here we are, the Clemson Tigers at number 15. They are your ACC champions, and they are going to be taking on the TCU Horned Frogs, the Beef O'Brady's Bowl inside the Dome at Tropicana Field. And here we're going to have some pretty nifty special effects on that one, so you're going to want to tune in. But for the Clemson Tigers, this one was the closest bowl game for them, the Beef O'Brady's Bowl down in St. Petersburg. And for the TCU Horned Frogs, they're a team that has never made it past the second round in the BCS playoffs. Last year, they were undefeated. They lost in the second round of the playoffs a couple of years ago. They went into it undefeated. They were upset in the very first round by East Carolina. They've had their fair share of great seasons, but when they get to the playoffs, they get upset. Never made it past the second round. If they want to try to make a run this year, they got to do it against the ACC champions. It's the ACC champs against the Mountain West champions, number 15 versus number 18. And it's the tradition, the Beef O'Brady's Bowl. It always kicks off the bowl championship series, and it'll do it again. Number 15 against number 18. That is Thursday at 1 o'clock on ESPN. And our final playoff matchup, the two teams that both lost their conference championships, and by losing on that final Saturday of the regular season, they go from playing a close bowl game near their fans to having to go nearly across the country to play Georgia and Michigan State. The last remaining bowl game out of the field of 16 is the San Diego County Credit Union Poinsettia Bowl over in California. These two teams have played each other before in the BCS playoffs, but that was years ago, and it should be a really fun one when the Georgia Bulldogs take on the Michigan State Spartans. That one is going to be Thursday in prime time at 8 o'clock on ESPN. Taking a look now at your NIT, the first ever NIT, number 1 Georgia Tech. They're going to be doing battle with the Toledo Rockets in the BBVA Compass Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama. The fans are sure to get out there to see a fun, exciting matchup. Toledo, who scores nearly 60 points a game against the Georgia ground-to-pound triple option. Something's got to give in that game. You can watch it Thursday at 1 o'clock on ESPN2. That one will be going on at the same time as the Beef O'Brady's Bowl. So the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, Clemson and TCU, and also Georgia Tech and Toledo, they will kick off the inaugural Bowl Championship Series. Moving on to that one, number 2 takes on number 7 Missouri. Will do battle with the Ohio Bobcats, the Meineke Car Care Bowl at Texas, and a game that will be Thursday, December 15th at 8 on ESPN2. That one in prime time. Virginia versus Louisville, Big East co-champions against the ACC's Virginia Cavaliers. The Cavs coming off a really bad defeat last Saturday, their final Saturday of the season, a really rough defeat. They're going to need to bounce back quickly. They're going at it in the New Mexico Bowl against Louisville, Friday, December 16th at 4:30. That one will be on the U. And our very last BCS playoffs game, part of the NIT, the first ever Christmas Bowl. It'll be from the LA Coliseum, Tulsa against Rutgers, number 4 versus number 5. The Christmas Bowl, Saturday at 8 on ESPN2. So finally wrapping this all up, you've seen the teams, you've seen the top 40. Now let's take a look at your playoff brackets. Here it is, LSU, Louisiana Tech in the New Orleans Bowl. Winner of that game will get Georgia and Michigan State. All this talk about rematches. What if LSU and Georgia pull off the victory? We'll be getting an SEC championship rematch in the second round. Moving down the line, this is almost like the SEC bracket. Kansas State going up against Auburn, and then they will get the winner of South Carolina and Texas. Whoever wins that bracket will take on the winner of bracket number 4. And there you see it, Stanford and Notre Dame kicking things off in the Kraft Fight Hunger Bowl. The winner of that game will get either Michigan or Nebraska in the who will be playing in the New Era Pinstripe Bowl. Oregon and BYU in the 20th anniversary of the Mako Bowl, Las Vegas. The winner of that game will get Baylor and Southern Miss in the Insight Bowl. Looking at bracket number 2. This is the Alabama bracket. Alabama and Northern Illinois in the GoDaddy.com Bowl. Winner of that game will battle either TCU or Clemson, those two going at it in the Beef O'Brady's Bowl. It's kind of weird when you think about it. Alabama, not even the conference champion at number 2, they're going up against the conference champion in NIU, who is champions of the MAC. Boise State, they are going up against Florida State, the rematch from last year on the blue. They're going to do it one more time. Famous Idaho Potato Bowl, and the winner of that game takes on either the Big Ten champs Wisconsin or West Virginia, who is the Big East champion. So champion versus champion in that game. Those two are playing in the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl, and the winner of that bracket will take on the winner of bracket 3. Who will it be from the Oklahoma State region? We got in the first round Oklahoma State, Arkansas State, Big 12 champion versus Sun Belt champions in the Armed Forces Bowl. Oklahoma versus Houston in the Champs Sports Bowl. So that's an interesting look, because if Oklahoma State wins and Oklahoma wins, we have a Bedlam rematch. Add that one to the Bedlam series. Will that count additionally? Who knows? Maybe Houston, they pull off the win. Then you got Houston and Oklahoma State. So right there, kind of like a Texas, Oklahoma kind of region with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Houston. But Arkansas, remember, fear the Sun Belt. 3-2 in first round games. Moving down the line, Arkansas will do battle with the Cincinnati Bearcats, the Music City Bowl. Winner of that game will move on to take on the winner of the Military Bowl, the ACC champions. The ACC runners-up, Virginia Tech, going up against the Penn State Nittany Lions. And then finally, just wrapping things up, you see it there, the NIT, the first ever NIT, Georgia Tech, number 1 seed, they get Toledo. Winner of that game gets Tulsa and Rutgers, Missouri and Ohio, and rounding it out, Virginia and Louisville. There it is, the BCS playoffs. They are just a matter of weeks away, 2 weeks in fact, and we will kick it off with the game you see there, the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, and of course the BBVA Compass Bowl in 2 weeks, 2 Thursdays from now. Those will be the ones that kick it off. Thanks for tuning in for the BCS Playoff Selection Show, and we hope you enjoy the playoffs. The top 32 teams going at it to find out who is going to be the national champion, and we are guaranteed to crown a new national champion this year, as last year's champs, the Ohio State Buckeyes, did not make the field of 40 with their 6-6 record. All right, folks, we will see you in 2 weeks.